It is 10 o'clock. I'm going to call this meeting to order. I would like to ask that everybody mute their cell phones or turn them off so we don't get any interruptions. And I would like to remind the members of our illustrious board to announce their names before they speak. So we can record who's saying what, and that's also as important when making a motion or seconding a motion. Make sure that you announce who you are if you're going to make the motion or second the motion so we can document who made it and who seconded it. With that said, I would ask Ms. Angelica Lopez Sparks to do roll call for me, please.
Yes, sir. Palmer Dent.
Present.
George Crawford. Mr. Crawford, can you hear us? If you want to give me a thumbs up. There you go. Okay. Alan Kripe.
Present.
Kyle Stell.
Present.
Bill Quisenberry.
Yep, I'm here.
Brian Mullen.
Here.
Naomi Doyle. Stuart Nestor.
Here.
Dan Lancaster. Mark Thompson. I apologize.
Present.
Richard West. And presiding officer Rob Trout.
Here.
You have a quorum, Mr. Trout.
Okay. Did we announce our new member, Kyle Stell?
We have not. If you want to give him an opportunity to introduce himself, please do so.
Okay. So, so I'd like to introduce everybody to Kyle Stell. How would you like to share with everybody about yourself?
My name is Kyle Stell, I'm operating officer.
I'm sorry, we can't hear you, sir. Can you turn your mic up a little bit? It's really hard to hear you.
Hear me now?
It sounds like you're in a hallway.
Yeah, a little bit more if you could. Or get closer to your laptop.
Good morning, everybody. My name is Kyle Stell. I'm the Chief Operating Officer for GCB Industries. Glad to be on part of the board and looking forward to it.
Thank you. So this is going to bring us to item C on our agenda, which I would ask Ms. Laura Pfefferly to do the general counsel training for refresher for the members and also for Mr. Stahl as our new member. Laura, you have the floor.
Hello, my name is Laura Pepperly, and can you all see the screen, the open records training?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, it's full screen?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes.
Okay. I'm Laura Pepperly with the General Counsel's Office, and we have to do this refresher training periodically, and so that's what we're going to do now. And it's a PowerPoint. If you have any questions, feel free. I'm just gonna go through it fairly quickly. And like I said, if you have any questions during, fine. If you have any after, that's good too. So the open government training covers 3 different acts of the Texas Legislature: open meetings, administrative procedure, and the Public Information Act. So those titles are kind of self-explanatory, but we're going to go through each one. First one, Open Meetings Act. This is the one probably the most relevant to you all because you're a board, and so you have to have your meetings open to the public, and they have to have public notice. And the way we do public notice is we publish the agenda, and that ties us into talking about the things on that agenda and limiting conversation to the things on that agenda. The quorum is the majority of the board. All the boards have an odd number of members so that it's easy to decide what is more than half. And so, that's why we're always making sure that there's a quorum, because you can't take an official action unless we have a quorum. And you have to meet to actually take official actions. And so deliberation or discussion is what we do in the meeting, and you have to be careful not to have deliberation or discussion about board business outside of an open meeting that's had notice and an agenda published. So you really have to confine discussions about board business to board meetings or committee meetings, also called work groups. So anytime you meet and you deliberate, that's a meeting, but whether it's a public meeting or not is the issue, and it needs to be a public meeting where we've given notice. The notice, like I said, we publish the agenda, and people are aware that the meeting's coming. The agenda lists what's going to be discussed, and we don't discuss items that are not on the agenda. It's okay if a public comment brings up something different. You can't have a long discussion about that. And all we can do really is just put it on the agenda for the next meeting. It's okay to attend events in the boiler industry and see the other board members. Even if there's a quorum present, it's okay to talk about the subject, but it's not okay to talk about the board business. So, it's quite all right to feel free to go to various meetings and conferences and that. Just don't talk about the board business when you're there, which would be mostly the rules. If you have a quorum, you have to be within a public meeting, and so that means that if you all come together for a meeting, whether it's virtual or in person, it counts if you talk about board business before the meeting or after the meeting or during a break in the hallway. If there's a quorum, that's not something you can be doing. If there's less than a quorum, that's okay, but the walking quorum is the next issue. And the walking quorum is when 2 or 3 people meet up and they know they're not a quorum and they're talking about board business, but then each one goes and tells another person on the board about it or talks about it, and then you're pulling in a quorum. And so that's what a walking quorum is, and that you have to be careful of that. If you do meet in a work group, which is going to be 3 or 4 members, you really can't take those discussions to the whole board until you're in a public meeting and talk about it there. This example here, a 5-member board and 2 members can, talk, that's fine, it's not a quorum. On a 5-member board, 3 would be a quorum. So the 2 that are talking, if they've pulled in another person, as in the example, then you've got the walking quorum. They've pulled in a 3rd person, and that's a quorum. And these are just examples of when you might engage in a discussion, and it doesn't have to be a verbal discussion. It can be on social media, email, however you talk about it. It's still communication. Practices to avoid it, it's pretty simple. Just be always aware of how many other board members you're discussing something with, and be careful that none of you bring it to more board members so that you don't run into the danger of developing quorum. So you just don't want to like forward an email to all the members of the board or, post or talk about it. If you're at a conference and you get up to speak and you start talking about board business, there's probably a quorum in that room. So you just kind of have to use common sense and just be aware. It's easy to just forget about that, but always be aware of how many board members you're with or communicating with. Let's see, okay. And then we stick to the agenda, and we pretty much will remind you if you're going off the subject. You don't have to really limit yourself on the subject. If we're talking about the rules, anything in the rules is fair game because we've noticed the public about the rules. Anything else on the agenda that, any discussion regarding the item is okay. It just can't go into some new territory that the public hasn't had notice of, because that's the point of publishing the agenda, is so that the public will know what you're going to talk about and show up and participate if they want to discuss that too. People can get up and make public comments, and mostly you'll just listen to that. If you need to ask a question to clarify what exactly they want to talk about, that's fine, but you just can't talk about it during that meeting. It'll have to be the next meeting if it's something to do with something that's not on the agenda. If it's just a subject that is not noticed, then it has to be noticed, so it would go on the next meeting's agenda. So kind of a wrap up, stay on topic with what's on the agenda. It's easy for a subject to just go off on a tangent, a discussion to go on a tangent, but we'll kind of help in that regard if it seems to be going that way. As far as the public comments, if we have them, you just kind of need to listen and maybe take some notes and then put it on the agenda for the next meeting if you feel like it needs to be talked about. There are, punishments for violating the Open Meetings Act, and you'll occasionally hear about it. It's embarrassing, to violate it. People feel like they, it's a breach of trust because it sounds like you're doing something behind the scenes. Maybe, you may feel it's perfectly innocent, but other people may not think so. So you just don't want to violate it. It looks bad, and it is bad to do that. We want to keep our public business in a public meeting, and we have a good option, which is the work groups, to talk about various boiler issues without any public present if we want to. Criminal penalties as well. This is not too scary. It's just so that they're out there. So the law does take it seriously that we don't violate the Open Meetings Act. If you're ever in doubt, just stop talking and ask. That's the easiest thing to do. Again, stick to the topics on the agenda and don't get into conversations about the board business outside of the public meetings. And there's lots of resources on this. If you're, wanting to look at those, or you just want to ask a question and not have to go read a book about it, that's fine. We can answer your questions. You can ask any of the board liaisons. You can ask me, whoever you want to ask. We're always happy to help you out on that. And so we'll move on to the Administrative Procedure Act, which is like the second most important thing you need to know about, because this governs how we do rulemaking, and that's your main participation on the board, is to get the rules the way that everyone wants them. And so we're going to go through this. The Administrative Procedure Act applies to all the agencies in the state, not just us. And it kind of makes the rulemaking process consistent from agency to agency, and so people know what to expect. And it's all about, all three of these laws are about transparency, that people don't feel like the government's hiding something from them. And so a rule is a statement of general applicability that prescribes law or policy or describes procedure or practice requirements of the state agency, but it's, if you think about it, it's something enforceable. Policy and guidance are not something we enforce. You can't really prosecute someone for violating a policy. So if it's about, how we operate our rulemaking process, it's not really a rule that the public has to obey or anything like that. But they do have to obey the substantive rules on boilers that we produce. But that's definitely a rule. That is not policy or procedure. So there are lots of reasons we do rulemaking. Here we don't have any legislative changes that we're implementing, but a lot of the times we do a rulemaking after session because there has been some change in the law. And it may just be a minor thing too. Sometimes it is a sweeping change, but usually not. If you have ideas or thoughts about a rule change we need, then we always are welcome to that, to hearing about that. The staff itself may become aware of something that needs to be changed in the rule. There may be a change in the code. Every 4 years we have to review the rules. There could be changes that come up then through public comment or just discussion. And there's also a formal rule petition that the public can do if they want to change in the rules. So there's a lot of ways that we get into rulemaking, and a lot of times there's more than one reason, because we try to combine them into one rulemaking occasionally instead of just doing rulemaking after rulemaking for small changes. And the petition, this happens in some programs a lot more frequently than others, and there are certain criteria. This is in the law and the rules as to how a group or a person can do a petition, and so it's just something to be aware of, but it's pretty infrequent. Now, this is the process for rulemaking, and I think, most of you that have been on the board a while know the process fairly well, but right now we're at that first blue box. We've drafted the rule, and we've gotten the governor's office approval on the rule. They're okay with it, and so we're at the first board meeting, and what we do at this board meeting is discuss the rules, make any changes that we want to make, and then you all will vote on whether to propose them for publication in the Texas Register. And that is basically publishing the proposed rules, and that's the decision you'll make today whether to recommend that. And if you do want to publish them, then it goes into the 30-day comment period after they're published. And we get a lot of public comments, which is, we don't always get a lot, but we'll get public comments. And then after that, we'll meet again so that you can decide whether you want to recommend the final rules for adoption. And then they'll go to the commission for adoption. We can make changes now easier than we can make them farther down the line. So now is when to speak up and say whether you like something or you don't, and if you want to change something, because it's harder to get changes through at adoption, because the whole point of these three laws is transparency. If we publish them and the public sees them and then we make a bunch of changes, then we have to republish them because the public hasn't seen those changes. So we have some leeway to correct things or make changes at adoption, but mostly we want to get the changes in now. So now is the time to do that. And This is rule review, the process of rule review. Every 4 years, we have to review the rules to see if they, we still need them. And of course, boiler is always going to be something we need. But that rule review does go through the notice and comment, procedure just like a regular rule. So we don't propose any changes. We just propose to re-adopt the rules, and we'll get comment. And so because we haven't proposed any changes, we don't adopt any changes, but we save those comments, and then we may do a regular rulemaking after the review to correct anything that has come up during the rule review process. And you'll be aware of this when this happens. You don't really have a whole lot of involvement with it, but you would if we get public comments during that rule review. And so again, lots of resources on rulemaking. We guide you through it, so you don't really have to become an expert on procedure, but it's good to know what steps are coming next in case, the public asks you something about the rule. You just kind of will know where you're at in that process. And so finally, the Public Information Act, this one you may or may not have some exposure to, but the public could always ask you about something. And so we're going to get into this just briefly. Every government agency has to follow the Public Information Act, and that means that our documents, records, whatever, photographs, recordings, anything is open to the public unless there's some exception. Of course, if we collect, driver's license numbers or social security numbers or license plate numbers, those are confidential. We don't give those out, but mostly we do have to, divulge the information we have in the documents. So that's what the Public Information Act does. It tells us what we have to, give if the public asks for it, and what we don't. And so if you use your personal email accounts to do public business, those are going to be subject to the Public Information Act. If you text, if you go on social media and it's about public business, those are all fair game for an open records request, which is another name for the Public Information Act. People call it the Open Records Act. So always be conscious of the fact that your communications and discussions could become public, and that's whether they're made in the work group or about a board meeting or about any public business. If there's any connection to what the board does to your public business, then it could be subject to having to be disclosed through the Open Records Act. Some exceptions will apply, but it's not a good idea to count on an exception. The public can ask for any records anytime. They have to do it in writing, which usually means an email. We also have a whole system online that they can go and request documents, and they do it all the time. They ask for the comments we receive. They ask for the rules. They just, there's really nothing off limits. They can ask for anything. They may not get everything, but they will ask. They'll ask for personal emails. So you may be asked by a member of the public, and that's something to be aware of. If somebody asks you for documents or correspondence that you have as part of the boiler board business, you need to not provide those and send it on to our open records people. And if you don't remember who they are, you can just contact Angelica or me, and we'll get it to the right place. But if anybody asks you for your notes on a meeting or the draft rule or anything, you really don't want to give out anything, because you're just not going to be able to become an expert on what we can withhold. And we can withhold things you'd be surprised, like the draft rules. They're actually confidential until they're published. So it's better not to take a chance. If somebody wants something, they just need to go through the channels. Well, this is just some examples of the things that we wouldn't give out. it's kind of common sense, but, you know, you'd be surprised sometimes what can be withheld, and sometimes it's a temporal thing. It can be withheld for a certain amount of time, and then it has to be released. Like if we're in litigation over something, we don't have to give out information about that litigation, but once the litigation's done, then we might have to give that out. And we asked the Attorney General's office about, you know, things that we want to withhold. If there's not a clear provision in the law that accepts it, then we have to ask for a ruling from the Attorney General's office on whether we have to release it or not. And that's a whole other process, and it's huge. The OAG handles thousands and thousands of those requests every year. And again, you know, if you get a request, you need to forward it. If somebody asks you verbally, you can say, well, you know, the agency will take an open records request, but you're gonna have to do it in writing. You can go online and do it. You can send them an email, you know, and they can find all the information on our website as to how to do it. But if you do get something in the mail or you know, in a text or something, and you think, oh, this looks like an open records information, Public Information Act request, just, you know, get that to our people that handle it, and we can help you with that. There are definite deadlines for responding, so you have to do that as fast as you can too. I need to emphasize that speed is very important. Again, lots of resources. If anyone has any questions about any of this, you can ask me now, or you can contact any of us later. There's a publication on the Attorney General's site for each of these laws that gives much more detail if you're curious about that. There's even a training on there on the Attorney General's site. So there's no lack of information about any of this. And so I'll wrap this up now. If you have any questions, like I say, now or later, that's fine, anytime.
Thank you, Laura.
Okay.
So that brings us to item E on our agenda, which is, item D, approval of the minutes. So I hope everybody got a chance to review the minutes. And I'll ask if anybody has any comments regarding the minutes. Hearing none, I'll ask for a motion and a second to approve the minutes of the board meeting for the Boiler Safety Advisory Rule Board of August 6, 2020. Do we have a motion?
Mark Thompson, I make a motion that the minutes be approved as written.
So we have a motion. Do we have a second?
Alan Kripe, I will second that motion.
Thank you. Any discussion? Hearing none, I'll call for the vote. Angelica, would you please do a voice vote for me?
Yes, sir. Palmer Dent.
Aye.
George Crawford.
Aye.
Alan Kripe.
Aye.
Kyle Still. Did you approve, Mr. Still? I didn't catch that.
Yes, I approve.
Okay, sorry. Bill Quisenberry. Mr. Quisenberry?
Muted at the time, Bill.
Aye, I'm sorry.
No, you're good. Brian Mullen.
Aye.
Stuart Nestor.
Aye.
Dan Lancaster.
Aye.
And Mark Thompson. Mr. Thompson?
Aye.
Okay, sorry. Motion passes.
Thank you, Angelica. This will bring us to item E, public comments. We did not, as I understand it, we did not receive any public comments.
Correct.
Thank you. That'll move us to item F, staff reports. So this is just going to be a briefing from the staff. So we'll start with the licensing division. Miss Yvonne Lopez is the licensing manager. Miss Lopez?
Good morning, advisory board members. Yvonne Lopez with the Licensing Division, Licensing Manager. You have the statistics before you for the authorized inspection agencies and the boiler inspectors for fiscal year 23 and fiscal year 24 to date. And I will be happy to answer any questions you might have.
Does anybody have any questions? Hearing none, we'll go ahead. Thank you, Ms. Lopez.
Thank you.
We will move on to item F2. This is the staff updates for Education and Examination Division. Ms. Ann Pascal.
Yes, good morning, Chairman and Advisory Board members. My name is Ann Pascal, and I'm a team lead in the Education and Examination Division, here today to give you your examination stats. As of second quarter of this year, you're sitting at an 85.7% overall passing rate. So that's all I have. If you have any questions, I'm more than happy to help.
Thank you. Does anybody have any questions for Ms. Pascal? Hearing none. Thank you, Ms. Pascal. We'll move on to Customer Service Division. Ms. Patricia Martinez Caslin.
Good morning, advisory board members. I'm Patricia Martinez, the customer service manager, and I'm here to share our statistics for fiscal years 2023 and 2024. Our numbers demonstrate a level of consistency throughout both fiscal years, and as context comes through, we work closely with the Boilers licensing team to address applicant emails and requests. That concludes the customer service reports. Please let me know if there are any questions.
Any questions? Hearing none, we'll move on to the Enforcement Division. And Ms. Cynthia Marple, which is the prosecutor and enforcement for us. Ms.
Good
Marple?
morning. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Trout. Good morning, board members. I am a prosecuting attorney with the Enforcement Division, and I'll cover highlights from our report for you. We have updated the format so that it is now reorganized to have the fiscal years in a side-by-side column for easier comparison. And we're also using the same set of months from each fiscal year. So in this case, we wouldn't be comparing the full fiscal year 2023 to a portion of fiscal year 2024. It's the same set of months. And the statistics here are through March of 2024. And this first section shows our performance measures, which are reported to the legislature. And although boiler cases do have a smaller number than other programs, this is a very important program, given the value of boilers to the industries and hospitals and schools in this state. And I'm sure you're well aware that if safety and inspection requirements are shortchanged, there can be tragic consequences. And as you can see, our performance measures are fairly consistent between the two fiscal years. Next, you'll see our criminal history review statistics. As you can see, no inspection licenses were denied based on a criminal history. And then moving on to complaints received by source, I find the pie charts at the top of page 2 to be more compelling than the side-by-side comparison. As you can see, boiler is a little different from main TDLR statistics because most of our complaints come from the departmental complaints, which are usually generated by inspectors. They'll find an issue when they do an inspection. And you can see how it compares side by side. Orders, usually if there's disciplinary action, agreed orders will result from that when we resolve it. And moving to the penalties and consumer remedies section, again, you'll see that we do have a high amount of penalties received so far for fiscal year 2024, and you'll see in the complaints, the two case summaries, you'll see the result of that. Very few disciplinary sanctions are issued with this particular program. And then moving to page 3 at the top, you'll see cases closed without disciplinary action. And this is a place where enforcement sometimes really shines. because our goal is not only to collect fines, but it's to gain compliance with the laws and rules. So when a licensee is able to take corrective actions, we can close the case either as informally resolved or downgrade it to a warning letter if we've already issued a penalty. And in some situations, the respondent has come into compliance before the attorney reviews the case. For example, they've fixed whatever the issue is with the boiler and received their certificate of operation. And there are also times when a case is investigated and we close for insufficient evidence. And then you'll also see a chart of our top allegations at violation, and then the top allegations that result in disciplinary action. And as you can see, it's consistent with complaints from an inspector because it's operating without the certificate, or the boilers are unregistered, didn't do the inspection, things like that. And down at the bottom of page 3 are the 2 case highlights that you can read as you have time. And then the final thing I would like to point out on page 4 is our complaint prioritization project that we were working on at the direction of the Sunset Commission from the last Sunset Review. The Enforcement Division has completed the review of each of the boiler's most frequent violations to identify and prioritize those that pose the greatest risk of consumer harm or physical injury. Our goal is to focus our limited resources on complaints that have the greatest impact to public health and safety in the most efficient way. There's more detailed information here in the report that you can review, and at this time the department has implemented prioritization for all its programs. And thank you for your attention, and please let me know if you have any questions.
Any questions from the board members for Ms. Marple? Hearing none, thank you, Ms. Marple. We will move on to the Compliance Division. And I would like to ask Mr. Keith Sanford, Boiler Program Supervisor, to give an update on the boiler program. Mr. Sanford?
Try that again. Good morning, Advisory Board members. I'll give you the update on the Compliance Division. We had 3 personnel leave employment with TDLR last year, and we moved forward with a MB 380 program by the National Board. This fast tracks our inspectors, or our trainee inspectors, to get their commission. Our job pool for these inspectors has gotten real small, so we've come up with a great way to train our personnel and get them up to snuff so we can get them out in the field. Our public outreach, Rob wrote an article for the National Board Bulletin that's going to be published in the upcoming Spring 24 Bulletin concerning the carbon monoxide for a detector as an essential tool. One other thing Rob's done is he's joined the National Carbon Monoxide Awareness Association recently. And when he joined this, they asked him to chair the Code and Standards and Regulations Committee. And Rob has graciously accepted that. If you have any questions or anything, please ask me.
Rob, you're muted. Can you hear us, Rob?
I'm sitting here talking and I muted myself so I didn't interrupt Keith. I'm sorry. So that's gonna appreciate it, Keith. We're gonna move on to Executive Director update. Before I ask Mr. Bruno to give his update, I would like to acknowledge and congratulate him on the last time we had our meeting, he was not a Deputy Executive Director. He was promoted, I believe it was last year or the year before that. Mr. Bruno?
Thank you so much, Rob. It's an honor to join you today. As Rob said, I'm Steve Bruno. Last time I was with you, I was Government Relations Officer, and today I join you as Deputy Executive Director, overseeing licensing services, which comprises the divisions of customer service, education and examination, and licensing. I just would like to give a brief update on the executive office. In addition to myself as Deputy Executive Director, our other Deputy Executive Director is Brandy Myers. Brandy was our Chief Financial Officer, and she has many great years of experience with TDLR. And before that, she was Chief Financial Officer with the Medical Board. She now joins me as Deputy Executive Director, and we have an interim Executive Director. A familiar name to many of you, Mr. Brian Francis, is currently serving as our interim Executive Director. Regarding, I know we haven't met since there was a legislative session, not a lot of action to report on in the boiler program from last session, which is always nice. We are in the midst of our strategic planning process, and this is something that each of the state agencies undertakes every 2 years. It's an opportunity for us to go out and hear from the public, hear from the regulated industry, hear from anyone who would like to provide comments about the way we're doing our business and ways to improve it. I would like to share with you all that we have an upcoming opportunity on April the 15th. That's going to be this coming Monday. It's going to be here in Austin at the Commons Conference Center. We've got a session starting at 8:30, and we've got a session starting at 1 p.m. And more information about those sessions is available on our website. If you're not able to join in person, both of those sessions, again, the 8:30 and the 1 p.m., have virtual options. And there's information on our website where you can join. We would love to hear your thoughts or comments, again, on our operations and specifically on the boiler program. That concludes my report, and I'm happy to answer any questions or comments that you all have.
Thank you, Mr. Bruno. Any questions, gentlemen?
Thanks, Rob.
Okay, hearing none, we'll go ahead and move on to item G, which is the possible recommendation on the proposed amendments to the existing rules. So before I ask Ms. Pfefferly to come back in and go over these rules with us, I just kind of want to give you all an idea of what we're looking for. So after Laura goes through these, I am going to ask for a motion to publish the proposed rules on the Texas Register. So after we go through these, if y'all are all in agreement, we would like to post them on the public register. We will need an actual vote to approve that for that to happen. So I will be asking that at the end of Laura going over all the changes. Secondly, I would ask if you guys have any comments, ask Ms. Pfefferly to stop and let's discuss them at the time. The one thing I really would not like to do is people have questions, wait to the very end, and then we got to scramble to go back to wherever it was. So please ask Ms. Pfefferly or raise your hand or speak up and let us know that you would like to discuss a little bit more into detail on any specific topic when we come to it. With that said, Ms. Pfefferly, would you please go over the proposed rules with us?
Okay, and this is Laura Pfefferly with the General Counsel's Office. I'm going to share my screen with you for the rules, and let's see.
Laura, can you turn your camera on as well for us when you get a chance?
What's that?
Can you turn your camera on as well for us?
Okay. Let's see. Okay, WebEx is trying to torture me as usual. Let's see. Okay, can y'all see the rule?
Yes.
Okay, and it's full screen, so you can see it? Okay.
Yes.
Okay, like I was saying when we were talking about the rule procedure, right now these rules are draft and they're also going to be proposed, if you all agree to propose them. We've been working on these a long time behind the scenes, and we think we have them in a reasonable format with reasonable requirements, but this is the time to discuss that. I'm going to show you some of the things I'm not going to discuss, which is there are lots and lots of changes that are just style or grammar or things like that. We're not going to spend time on those, or we'll be here until the next eclipse. So this is an example in the first definition. When you see underline, that's something new, and then when you see brackets and strikeout, that's what's going away. So you can see the before and after, the what we're putting in, what we're taking out, wherever you see underline or brackets. And so in that first definition, this is the kind of thing, I'm just going to skip over that. Unless you have noticed there's an error or something, we won't take time on those. And these kinds of changes also can be corrected at adoption, because they're really not of substance. They're just form or format. So you're going to see, as we go through these rules, a lot of yellow. Everything's highlighted that's been changed. And if I skip through something and you're like, wait a minute, I want to see that, fine, we'll just go right back to it. But a lot of what I'm skipping is just things like that. The rule we're looking at here, this is kind of my workup of the rule. The one you have in your packets is called the red line, and it's just the sections with changes. Well, I put them into the rule with everything in there so that you can see it in context, and also we can look at things that haven't been changed that are in the rules if we need to. So this is going to look different from the one you have. It's the same changes, but you're going to see sections that don't have any changes. And if they don't have yellow and they don't have underlining and strikeout, they just don't have any changes, and we don't need to worry about that. But if you want to look at something on that, it's here. So I'm going to just start going through the major substantive changes, so to speak. And if I skip too fast, or you want to look at something, or you need to ask about it, or you feel like we need to discuss it, that's fine. That's what we're here to do. We can make, like I said, changes, corrections, whatever you want to talk about and consider doing. This is the time to do it. When it goes to public comment, the changes that we make today will be in there, and that's what the public will see and comment on. At adoption, after the comment period, you'll see these again, and then you'll recommend for adoption if you decide to do that, and that will be with any changes that come from the comment period. If we have comments and you all decide you want to change something, we'll see if it's something we can change without having to repropose the rules. If it's a drastic change, we'd have to repropose, and we just start over with a new draft. So I'm just going to start walking through these, and just don't worry about it if I skip a lot, unless you have a question about what I'm skipping, but mostly I'm skipping these non-substantive changes. Okay, the first substantive changes are adding definitions for blowdown, because later on we have new requirements for blowdown. So we define separator, tank, and water. So those are new definitions.
Pepperly?
Pardon?
I just wanted to, I noticed that several of the board members have their mics muted. I would encourage them to either unmute them or make sure that you unmute it if you have a question. That way we know that you have a question. I would hate for y'all to be talking in the background and we don't even know you're talking.
Yeah, we can't, if we can't hear you, we can't hear you. And I'm looking at the screen you're looking at, and I don't see hands raised. and that sort of thing. So, you know, you do need to speak if you want to discuss something.
Rob, I would suggest that they just state their name and unmute them, or unmute themselves and state their name. We don't want to pick up too much of the background noise if they're all unmuted.
Okay.
Okay.
Okay. In addition to adding those blowdown definitions, we did clarify the definition of install. Let's see. It's really not changing it. It's just kind of cleaning out the language. And let's see. So the rest of the changes in the definitions are just bringing things into lowercase and that sort of thing. So nothing to really worry about there. So the next section with changes is going to be 65.8. We removed this because the MD360 is going away, so we just don't need this anymore for registration for it. So that's just being repealed. And then in 6512, basically the changes here, I mean, the wording is fixed up, but the actual substantive changes are here in B. When the certificate's issued, it's just clarifying the obligation to comply and to have periodic inspections it triggers that. And the presumption is going to be that once you get a certificate of operation, that you're operating. If you're not, and something comes up, then you'll need to demonstrate that you weren't operating or aren't operating, but it's going to be presumed that you're continuing to operate. And in 6513, this installation, we've kind of cleaned this up and clarified it. So one thing that changed is instead of giving 30 days to submit the report for the installation, it's when you're done with the installation, then you need to send it in. We don't have a number of days. It just says once the installation is complete, then send in the report. And you know, mostly I think those are emailed, so it's really, we don't feel like that's a big problem. And also it's clarifying that you can't be operating or test firing for the first inspection unless it's conducted in compliance with the rules, the installation report's been submitted, and a temporary operating permit's been approved. And this is not really anything new, but it is stating the requirements a little more clearly. And you know, we do need to get those installation reports in sooner, so that is one change. And let's see.
Brian Malin with just want to know when we consider the boiler is fully installed, as the department does.
When does the department consider it fully installed?
Yes, because that's because we're removing the 30 days. What point is the boiler considered completely installed that they have to submit this installation permit for? Since now it's not a 30-day or a window. We're basing it off of the install. I'm just looking at the law doesn't really, it talks about the install of the boiler, but it doesn't say when it's complete. And we're saying the install permit has to be issued or has to be requested after as soon as it's completed. I know the comment's going to come up from people in the industry, so I figured I'd breach it now.
Okay, so the boiler is considered installed as soon as they put it in place and connect everything to connect water, gas, electricity, and output line or steam or water, depending on the system. But it's installed at that time, but they still cannot test fire it.
Correct. I understand that.
So
I'm just saying, I just want to make sure that there's, if when this is written out, if the definition needs to be, you know, just like as if when we're uninstalling it, it has to have those metrics met. To install it, has to have those same metrics met.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
I would consider a boiler installed when it's electricity, water, fuel source, and outlet or output of the boiler is connected. If it's just sitting in place and nothing's hooked up, then it's not installed. But we also consider a boiler to be disconnected in place if those four things are disconnected.
Correct.
So it's considered to be installed when those four things are connected.
So do we need to add this into the rule somewhere, or maybe in a definition, or?
I personally don't think that we need to add a definition of what a boiler is installed or how it has to, what defines it to be installed. To me, I think it's pretty logical. If it's disconnected in place or if it's been completely removed from service, when it goes to be installed again or reinstalled, if it's a secondhand boiler, or installed if it's a new boiler, once you connect the fuel source, the water, the outlet of either steam, the steam line, or the outlet of the water line for a hot water heating boiler, and the electricity fuel source, water, and the outlet. Once those are installed, I don't see the need for it. If the members would like to see something like that, I mean, we can look at it. If you want a definition of what makes the boiler installed. I think it's kind of common sense myself.
This is Alan Kripe. If under the definitions, number 40, I'm sorry, number 39 describes it, I think, good enough, Brian, to answer what your question would be. Without getting too caught up in the weeds, I think number 39 with the changes that they have proposed covers that base.
Yeah. And in order for the boiler to be brought into service, those four things have to be connected. Does that answer your question, Brian?
Yes.
Okay. Thank you, sir.
Okay. The next section with substantive changes is 6515. Just adding that past due invoices need to be paid to get the certificate. Let's see. And so that's the only thing there. And that's kind of been the position all along. Okay, the 6525, we're taking out the NB 360, 369 there because only one of those is in effect now. So that's just not really a substantive thing, it's just updating. And we have just non-substantive here until, let's see, 6540. We've updated the requirements for commission cards and streamlined that so that it's less of an issue. We are not, well, you'll be able to have a digital commission card. You don't have to have the paper, and so you can see A and B there are just rewritten. It's not really, anything new. It's just updating the process for the commission cards. And we've also removed the fee for those when we get to the fee section. And the authorized inspection agency is supposed to let us know that the person no longer works there, but all of these other requirements that we had in there are going away. You can see they're lined out. So it's just kind of rewritten and updated, simplified, and that leads into the reissuance too. That's simplified as well. So it's really not anything controversial, I think. It's just kind of updating and making that simpler.
Alan Kripe, I have a question on that. So from how I'm interpreting the change in 6540B, they don't have to have a card now. They can have either a card or a digital form of the card. Is that what I'm understanding?
Or a paper copy, yes, sir.
Okay. Well, the reason, I mean, as an end user, you know, in my industry, the dry cleaning industry, a lot of those guys, if someone doesn't show up with the proper form of ID, they're going to get squirrely. And so if it's just a digital form of ID of what they are, I mean, I'm assuming this is, I may be confused. This may be separate from what their actual ID is.
Well, so TDLR actually issues a commission card. And this is the, so the commission looks, let's see, just like that. So it's got the person's name on it. It's got TDLR on it. It tells what their commissions are. So right here at the top, it'll say in service or ASME. And then the expiration date and the commission number is down here at the bottom. So anybody doing an inspection is required to have one of these cards, and it has to have the in-service commission listed at it if they're doing a in-service inspection. So if they have a digital copy of this card or a paper copy of it or the card itself, the front of the card has all the information that's needed on it, whereas the back is the signature of our executive director. Okay, so there's really no information on the back other than the signature, but the front has all the information on it that's needed.
Alan Kripe again. Thank you, Rob, for that clarification. I don't know if I'm the only one that thinks it might be a good idea for the inspectors to have some form of, I don't know, badge or it doesn't necessarily have to be a photo ID, but something with their photo ID on it going forward. That's just, you know, when you have the power to shut somebody down essentially as a business, something in addition to that business card might be, you know, help those folks out. I'm just putting that out there.
Understood, but I also want to point one other thing out. So you made the comment that someone that has the authority to shut them down. Authorized inspectors, inspectors that work for authorized inspection agencies do not have that authority. If they find an unsafe condition, they are required to reach out to me, and then I make the decision of if it has to be turned down or not. And I will send one of the state inspectors who will have their TDLR badge and their commission to actually hang a red tag on the boiler if it's found to be unsafe.
Okay, duly noted. That's all I needed to hear. Thanks, Rob.
Thank you. Go ahead, Laura.
Okay. This next section, 6550, is about conflicts of interest. It's just saying that we don't want inspectors out there installing boilers. If you used to install boilers and now you're an inspector, you know, this is to prevent conflicts of interest as far as, inspecting something you installed. So if you are asked to do an inspection on a boiler that you actually installed, you'd have to refuse that. But if we, starting out now, if we have this prohibition, then this shouldn't be a problem going forward. And it just makes sense, that you can't be inspecting something you installed. Let's see. Okay. This 6561 is the next section with substantive changes. The requirement to have the inspection is not anything new, but we're stating it clearly here that it's got to be done before the expiration date of the certificate. And it's putting the obligation on the AIA to get the inspection done. It gives you an out if the owner won't cooperate and won't let you get the inspection done. If that's not your fault, obviously, but the AIA is being given more of a responsibility to get these done. And let's see, the new late inspection fee is going to apply to the AIAs if these aren't done timely, and there's no reason that it couldn't be done. If the owner prevents you from doing it, we can't control that, but your obligation is to get the inspection done before the certificate expires. And so even though the owners and operators also are subject to the late inspection fee, the AIAs will be as well. And we'll be going through the fee when we get to the fee section. But this is just letting you know that this is a new consequence of not getting the inspection done timely. And this requirement is not going to start until a year after the rule is adopted. So it gives time for AIAs to look at their procedures and how they're operating and make changes so that these inspections are done timely. And so that's what that's about. If you've read that, it's pretty straightforward. There always was an obligation to get these inspections done, of course, but this is just kind of putting it down that there's responsibility and there's consequences in the late inspection fee.
Axel Insurance Company. Just got a couple questions on this. What documentation is consistent for showing that we tried to get the inspection? I understand we can say we were denied entry, but if it's a steam boiler and it's not shut out, the only thing I can hit them for is failure to open the boiler. Is that going to be accepted?
Brian, if you write a document, if the insurance company documents that the boiler was either denied access to the inspector or the boiler was not prepared for inspection, the owner is clearly assessed the responsibility of preparing the boiler for inspection. If it's not, and they document that, that shows that the inspection agency tried to do it and the owner held it up, and the inspection agency would not be held accountable at that point.
Okay, what is the grace period going to be for if we pick up insurance on an already past due boiler?
So if you pick up a past due boiler, the inspection agency that had responsibility of it when it went overdue is the one that's going to get be assessed the no inspection fee. If a company takes it over, and we didn't put this in the rule, but I would be okay with 30 days, and I can write a techgram on that. Because if you take over an inspection responsibility for a boiler that's already overdue, you obviously needs to be given time to go do that. And I think 30 days is a pretty reasonable time. So do you think it's something that we need to put in the rules?
And the other question is there any penalties for TDLR itself if they don't meet these metrics?
Well, I think maybe you're asking about the way we refer the inspection to another AIA to do it. We're not going to be doing the referrals.
No, that's not what I mean. I mean, if the state doesn't at least make notice to their own customers, is there some sort of write-up or something for the inspectors that are within the TDLR, some sort of punishment for them for not reaching out and making sure the inspection happens before? Because they're just as behind as most other customers are currently right now. So just trying to, good for the goose is good for the gander kind of a thing.
Well, this is also, so just to kind of expand on what you're talking about, yes, TDLR does have overdues right now. But I'm going to go back to September of last year when I announced to all the AIAs that they had to, meet the criteria of getting boilers caught up that we set. And where TDLR is, the overdues we have are the overdues that were switched to us because the inspection agency said they no longer have coverage. Okay, so all the overdues that we have, all except for, I would say, maybe 50 of them are AIA overdues that were dropped on us. And I can actually show the paper trail where it was dropped on us through the Texas pending in jurisdiction online. So if you're asking, is TDLR going to assess a penalty to itself the same as it would the AIA?
No, I'm not asking for that because that would be redundant. I was just saying, is there some sort of if it happens to a non-AIA inspector and he's past due, greater than 30 days or something like that on multiple locations, that, maybe that's something that's going to be, you can just say that it'll be handled in-house or something,
If, make no mistake about it, if the way the deputies are assigned areas within Texas, they have their own assigned region. If a deputy gets behind, their team leader, they have discussions with them immediately on that. Again, right now, I've got overdues in every single area that we have. Some as little as 5, some as many as 40 of. But again, those are inspections that were dumped on us that were already overdue that an AIA had. And we're still trying to figure out if another AIA picked them up or whatever. But we've been diligently working on getting everything caught up. The other thing that Laura was talking about here is we're asking if this gets pushed, if this goes through and is approved, we're not going to make it effective till a year after it's adopted by the commission is what we're looking at. And the thought process with that is to give all AIAs all the time that's needed to catch everything up. I will tell you, we're going down this path because we had a very big problem. And in fact, we actually opened an enforcement action. You heard earlier Ms. Marple talking about enforcement actions. You'll see that there was a penalty earlier in the announcements under Ms. Marple, there was a $300,000 penalty. That was for not conducting boiler inspections. And we went through the enforcement process and assessed that penalty to that inspection agency for not conducting its inspections. Okay. What this is going to allow us to do is to not have to tie up more resources and going to enforcement before we can start pushing inspection agencies and owners and to get their inspection done in a timely fashion. So a lot of the boilers that are overdue already, when you look at those, I would say probably since September, I would say of the ones that are overdue, probably 50% of them have documented violations for not allowing access to the inspector. And for that reason, the inspection agency is basically, they're turning it over to us to get it inspected. And when we go in, if they refuse to go in, then we have to do an enforcement action on this. This penalty, and you'll see it when we get to 300, it actually assesses a penalty that is, I would say that it's a definite measure that will encourage people not to let their boiler go overdue. Right now, the way it's written, if a owner were to let their boiler go overdue for say 2 years, and it's on an annual cycle, so it's supposed to get inspected for every year. The only penalty is a $70 penalty, and that's it. Whether it's they let it go overdue for 2 years or 10 years, it makes no difference. Under the proposal, it actually makes it to where the penalty is cumulative or collective day by day. So it's going to be a substantial penalty. The longer it goes, the bigger the penalty will get. And this penalty will be assessed to both the AIA and the owner. The AIA, because the law says that the owners or the AIA has to do the inspection. And if they can't get the owner to let them in to do the inspection or prepare the boiler for inspection, then they write the violation and they get no penalty. Whereas now the owner's going to get the penalty, and they're still going to get the same penalty. It's going to be cumulative throughout every day. It's going to add. So we're looking at reducing the number of overdues by making it a penalty or a we call it a no inspection fee. And it's going to make it to where people want to get their inspections done instead of just letting it go. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Did I answer your question as well?
Mostly. Like I said, still on the fence a little bit about. I'd like to see like a grace period of like 5 days, but like I said, y'all don't do any grace periods at all, so it's.
Well, so when you're talking about a grace period, you're talking about a grace period from one AIA picking up a boiler that's already overdue from someone else, whether it be TDLR or another AIA, correct?
Well, sometimes we get them literally we pick it up on Friday and it's due on Monday. My inspector didn't have time to figure it out, call the customer, schedule it. It might be he's in Houston and the inspection's in El Paso, and we go there 3 times a month or 3 times a year. It's going to be impossible to hop on a flight, go out there, do the inspection, and we're just going to have to incur a $25 a day thing until we get out there. That's why I'm saying there should be some sort of a grace period for the AIA to be able to pick up, because Texas is the largest in landmass of the central states, and not everybody has inspectors all over the place. We have a total of 3 inspectors, and all of them are in the east portion of Texas. I don't know how many. Shannon, do you have any inspectors in El Paso, Odessa area?
No, Brian, I don't have any inspectors in El Paso. I have 5 inspectors in the state of Texas, currently commissioned, and they're located in Dallas, Austin, College Station, Houston areas. So we too would have to fly to El Paso. My questions to add to Brian's, Chief Trout, would be, how are these penalties going to be issued to the AIA? If they're not going to be done under an administrative action, are they going to be billed through jurisdictional online? or what's the mechanism in place to notify the AIA that there is a penalty, what the value of the penalty is and how that penalty has to be paid. So quite a few questions on the mechanical end of the process for you.
So that process is going to be done through JO, like you talked about. And another reason we're pushing it back for a year, giving everybody the chance to be able to clear everything up. We have to hire JO to do the programming to do that within JO. But it's all going to be done through JO. As far as grace periods, the problem that I see, Brian, is there is no grace period in the law that allows the boiler to go overdue. But in the rules is where the penalties are. So I'll have to get with Laura and talk about legality of if we can give a inspection agency a grace period of so many days in order to let them go do that inspection if they picked it up within the last couple of days and it's going overdue.
It could be just like you were saying earlier, you're going to give us a 30 days from when we pick up a past due. It can just be we have to have an inspection done if it's due or going to be past due within that 30 days. So if we pick it up and it was due, say April 15th, we now have until and we say we picked it up today, we would have until May 10th to get that April 15th inspection performed. Does that make sense? It could all be in the same line.
I definitely understand what you're saying. My biggest concern, and this is where I need to get with Laura on the legality of it, because if the boiler is not overdue yet, when you take responsibility, even if it's 2 days later, is when the boiler's going overdue. I don't know the legality of if TDLR can say it's okay to not get that inspection done prior to the expiration date of the current certificate of operation. That's because the periodicity is set in the actual statutory requirement of either 1 year, 2 years, or 3 years, depending on the type of boiler. So my concern is that I have to make sure that we can do that, even though it's going to be in violation of the law. I have to verify that we have that authority to be able to give a 15-day grace period to be able to go out and do that inspection if it's already overdue, or if it's coming due right after you got it. That's a legality thing that I've got to get from executive office and general counsel.
All right, thank you.
But we will discuss it. I see Laura already making notes.
And I think if you could take into account the potential impact or burden on the carrier in light of school districts, as an example, if they have 30 boilers that come due, as Brian indicated his example, you accept coverage on the policy in JO on a Friday, the boilers start coming due. You could say 30 a day potentially in some of the larger school districts. So it could be very impactful if you're accruing a penalty by day for 90 boilers coming due within a 3-day period, within 2 or 3 days of coverage effective dates. And in some cases, the boiler inspection units in carriers aren't even notified within the month of that coverage. And then the second half of it is, how is the department going to address a potential combination of reporting agencies? In other words, is TDLR going to stay with jurisdictional in line, or will we have to rewrite the rules for another reporting agency if a decision is made in TDLR to switch or use both? So curiosity there more than a point.
So are you asking if we're going to stay on JO?
Yeah, fundamentally, is Texas going to get on board with JRS, and how's that going to affect it? Will you develop your own penalty system if you change reporting agencies?
Well, so currently TDLR is looking at putting a statement of work out. We do have TDLR staff working on looking at the two companies that do the online reporting. Currently, we're on JO. We are looking at what's going to be better for the state. And after we go through the procurement process on that, we'll be better detailed to give you all an answer on that. But at current time, we don't have a contract with anybody other than JO.
Shannon Nestor, CNA Insurance, no further questions.
Any other questions? Okay, go ahead, Laura.
Okay. 6562 is just sort of reiterating that the boiler needs to be prepared for inspection, when you're notified. So that's really not anything new, but it's just clarifying that. And let's see. The next clarification is on the boiler number. It's just kind of updating the requirements for the tag on the boiler and when it needs to be on there. Nothing major. And the next substantive change is in 6583. This just lays out more specifically what should be done and when it should be done if there's an accident. What to, not disturb, what can be disturbed, under what conditions. If someone's life is in danger, that's one thing, but we really need the scene to be intact to sort out what happened. And so this is just really clarifying the things to do and not do, and things to preserve if there's an accident.
Bramlin Exo Insurance Company. Back in the day when y'all used to send out actual paper permits, they used to also include, other things to hang in the boiler room. Is there any way we can get, when they print out their new digital one that they can print out to hang in there, that they also have those pieces of paper along with it so we can know that they had this information?
Which paper are you talking about, Brian?
They used to have a piece of paper that would say, hang this in your boiler room, and it talked about what to do in case of an emergency or boiler explosion or whatnot. It's still on the TDLR website. I can't remember the name of the document. But I just remember it used to be when people would get their new permit, it came with that document, and then they would hang it up right next to their permits in their boiler rooms.
We actually moved that document some time ago to the back of the actual certificate of operation.
Okay, when you print them out, that does not print out with them from the TDLR invoice.
Well, it's not with the invoice. It's on the certificate of operation.
I'm saying when you print the certificate out from the TDLR invoice page, it does not print that document out.
I'll have to check into that.
Okay, it was just a note, that something I had noticed, and I wanted to make sure that if we can help our customers in any way, shape, or form, because it's something I think is needed in every boiler room.
Shannon Nestor, CNA Insurance. I would also ask, is there a repercussion for failure to adhere to this administrative rule change? In other words, if an entity violates proposed rules, what happens?
I'm sorry, I didn't catch that, Mr. Nestor.
So the question is, if the proposed rules are accepted and an entity has an accident but doesn't adhere to the rules, what are the repercussions? Is it just simply noted in the inspection or the investigation process that they were violated? Or will there be penalties?
No,
And
sir.
then does sovereign immunity protect an entity from adhering to the rules?
I actually have a case, an enforcement action open for that exact item currently. So what we end up doing at TDLR is the only repercussions that we have currently is to open an enforcement action against that entity.
Okay.
So we don't require the AIAs to serve notice to the state of the accident. Which unfortunately, that's where I usually find out about them is from the AIA when they go out to do the inspection because it's coming due. Since there's nothing in the rules that will penalize or do anything like that, what we do is we just do a formal complaint on that company, and then it goes through the enforcement process. And then enforcement would assess a penalty for not following the law or rules with them.
Okay. Shannon Nestor, CNA Insurance. A question for Laura. Does sovereign immunity protect government entities, municipalities, and school districts from this administrative action?
You're probably right about that. It depends on who is responsible for preserving that scene. The Attorney General usually is not interested in prosecuting local governments or schools. And so it would be on a case-by-case basis that would be sorted out. Once this proposal is published and the rules are adopted, the enforcement section redoes the penalty matrix to lay out the what the violation is and a recommended penalty in that. And so that'll be looked at once the rules are adopted. So there will be a specific addition to the penalty matrix for anything that can be violated that's new, a new sort of violation. As far as sovereign immunity, we don't really need to address it in the rule because it's going to be addressed at some point in the enforcement process. But yeah, you're likely right that it's going to be something that a school or a local government is not going to face a penalty for. We can look into that though.
Shannon Nestor, CNA Insurance. No further questions.
Thank you, Mr. Nestor. Laura?
Oh, this is George Crawford. I just wanted to let everybody know. I've got a certificate right here. It does say at the top when you print it out, it's got all the information right there. So Brian, it's got accident information and posting requirements and numbers for questions right on the certificate when you print it out.
So it's off, George, is that off the top? That's above the certificate. So
Yes, right above when you print the paper out, it's got the certificate on the bottom, and on the top, it's got all the information that Brian was asking about.
All right. I thought it was on the certificate. I was going to check with them, but thank you. Go ahead, Laura.
Okay. The next change here is again submitting the installation report after the installation is done, and that's in the rule up above as well in 6513. I think we've clarified about when the installation is complete, when the boiler is reconnected or connected. So I don't see us changing that wording there.
This is
The,
Brian Lynn with the Exxon Insurance. Is there ever going to be like a like on TDLR invoice where maybe the installers could fill out their report from TDLR invoice and pay their payment all at the same time? That's a functionality we're thinking about bringing on.
So they can fill out the boiler installation report online now and pay the invoice at the same time.
Where is that located?
That's on the portal, the JO portal. So if you go to our boiler program webpage and it says print invoice or print certificate,
So yeah, that'd be the TDLR invoice. Okay.
that is also or request a permit. If you request a permit, it actually gives you you can actually, when you finish it, it will actually let you go in and pay your invoice right then and there after you create the permit. And you can pay it online.
Well, I see emergency extension permit, joint review permit, restamping permit, and variance permit. I don't see a one for installing a new boiler.
One second, please. Let me
No
pull it
problem.
up on one of my other screens.
I didn't go to the TDLR website. I went directly to the JOL TDLR.
So I just went to the boiler program webpage. I'm sorry, I'm waiting for my computer to log me on.
We understand.
So when you go to apply for a permit, where is I'm not seeing my temporary operating permit either. I'm gonna call JO about that.
All right. Just checking, like I said, because I'd like to, as I meet installers, I like to tell them, whatever the newest and greatest thing is to make their job more simplified. And this also aligns them with making sure they don't miss the boiler installation report.
So with that said, I will also tell you that you can also submit the BIR and the TOP online without going through that. And then once so the invoice for the BIR is an automatic thing and gets applied with the boiler inspection, and that goes to the owner user. Okay, that does not go to the installer. Okay. The temporary operating permit, that is a permit that the owner or the installer can apply for and pay because he wants to obviously start the boiler prior to the inspection taking place and let it run so he can get paid. But if you go to on our boiler program webpage, I apologize. We kind of changed up our webpage within the last couple of months, and now I'm trying to. This is one thing I haven't gone in and looked at lately. Frequently has telegrams and memos. I don't want to take up a lot of time. Brian, I'm going to have to get back to you on where that is on the boiler program webpage.
Yeah.
I will, I'll tell you what I'll do, guys. I'm gonna figure out where that's going or why I can't find it. Once we get it pointed out on our webpage, I will send the information to Angelica and ask her that she send it out to the entire board so they can all see where it's at. And that's gonna keep us away from going, that'll keep us from getting off. But I do want to get back to the rules. We need to stay on topic here. That's a separate topic.
Okay.
Okay, the next two sections are repealed because the requirements are moved to other sections, are covered elsewhere in the rules that we've already gone through. And also the overdue inspection, we're not going to be referring those to another AIA. This will just be handled by, imposing the late inspection fee on the AIA that's responsible. And we have some changes in the board's rules, but these are just to make it consistent with the statute. Nothing really controversial there. And let's see. This is repealed because it's been moved up into that section and it's just kind of condensed up there. This section is updated to kind of match changes that we've done in other sections as far as, getting the report, the installation report in. It's improving the wording here. And let's see. It's really updated to match the installation requirements. And the other addition is that presumption that once you start operating, that you're going to continue to operate. That, it's obviously open to dispute. If you have records that show that it wasn't an operation, that's, that's something you need to keep. But otherwise, we're going to presume that the boiler is continuing to operate. And let's see. The next real changes are in the boiler room. We're requiring a visual display on the CO monitor. The bulk of you probably, if you have a CO monitor, it has a display on it, but this is just making it clear it needs to have a display. It's providing the option to use a remote monitoring system. And when you use a remote monitoring system, then it gives these additional conditions which make it easier to deal with it if the CO level starts rising before a shutdown happens, because it's pretty clear that most of us want to avoid the shutdown. So you'll have until it gets to 200 ppm before it has to interlock and shut down. And we don't really have any particular requirements on what kind of system you use. If you do remote monitoring, you just need to comply with these conditions.
Mr. Chairman, this is Bill Quisenberry. It looked like there was a contradiction there of, you could scroll down just a little bit. It looked like it said that all burners should be turned off at 50, shall be interlocked to disable at 50, and then below it says at 200.
Well,
I've always been under the impression that at 200, at 50, it would issue an alarm, and 200, it had to shut down. Is what I thought the original concept was on this, but it looks like in this that it's 50 in both places.
Well, so the remote monitoring system is it's set to alarm personnel at 50 parts per million.
I believe it.
So when you go into 3A,
Mhm.
so that's the remote monitoring, it's alarming. So it's notifying people that it's an alarm, but it doesn't have to shut down. It says alarm, the boiler location must not be capable of being disabled until the measured level falls below 50 ppm. And then the next paragraph says that it has to shut the boiler off at 200 parts per million.
Laura, could you scroll back down, please? I guess maybe I meant up because I saw.
Yeah, I think it's, yeah, you're talking about, it first says it needs to shut down at 50 ppm, and then it says if you're remotely monitoring it, you don't have to have it shut down at 50. You've got until it gets to 200 before it has to shut down.
Well, yeah, Mr. Chairman, why would that be different for remote monitoring?
Why would what be different for remote monitoring?
Well, that we're going to be able to interlock to disable the burners at 50 here, but if a remote, it's at 200.
So item number 2 is not applicable. That's if you don't have a remote monitoring system. Number 3 is you can use a remote monitor system, and at that point now it only goes into alarm at 50 parts per million. It can't be disabled until it falls back below 50 ppm, and if it gets up to 200 ppm, the CO detector secures the boiler. So paragraph 3 is in lieu of paragraph 2.
Okay. I have concern here, but I won't encumber the meeting with that. Can we perhaps discuss that offline? Because I can think of scenarios where this wouldn't necessarily be. I've always been under the impression since this was added that it was an alarm at 50 and a lockout at 200, and it didn't matter whether it was remote or local. So.
But we this is Laura Pepperly, we haven't changed the rule on that. It always did say that it had to be interlocked to disable at 50. It didn't have the 200 in there. That's all new. So it was in there, and it currently is, that it has to disable it if it gets above 50 ppm. So, if we rework it to where everyone can, wait until it gets to 200 ppm before it has to shut off, that would be something new, because it isn't in there right now.
So I would also offer the reason that we have it shuts it down at 50 ppm is because OSHA requires no admittance into a room that has more than 50 ppm. That is the point that OSHA says no more entry, but then it's got a second paragraph that says you can go up to 200 ppm for roll on and roll off, which is like unloading a truck. If you're like using a forklift to unload a semi, and that forklift is propane fired, so it's going into the trailer of the semi, it's in an enclosed area. That level of CO may go up to 200 parts per million, but since you're going in and coming back out, it's not a problem. And OSHA has actually addressed that in the requirements for OSHA. So I originally, when we created this rule, we originally had it at 200 parts per million, but we reduced it to 50 parts per million because that's when OSHA says no more entrance. Okay. So, and at that time, if I remember correctly, you had asked us, well, you've got personnel that has detrimental processes going on, or products that if the temperature falls below so far that a nuisance shutdown because of a CO detector at 50 parts per million can cause them to throw away several $1,000s of product. I think the example you gave us was a milk place that was processing milk. If the boiler shut down at 50 parts per million, that company may have to throw $50,000 worth of milk product away because it did not meet the FDA requirements. And that's when we went in and said, well, okay, well, what about doing a variance that will allow them to put a remote monitoring system on it at 50 ppm, that it goes into the alarm, lets the people know, hey, carbon monoxide is increasing, or carbon monoxide levels are increasing in the mechanical room, and you need to report to the mechanical room and fix the problem before it gets up to 200 parts per million, at which time the boiler will shut off. So now they either get time to fix the boiler and prevent it from shutting off, or move that product where it won't have to be disposed of. So the rule's always been, it shuts down at 50 parts per million, period, the end. And then I've been granting variance for remote monitoring systems that'll allow it to go into alarm at 50 ppm, but still shut off at 200 ppm.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, the next section that there's significant change on is the fee section. And the certificate of operation fee is not changed. This adds that to renew, well, to get another certificate, that any past due amounts need to be taken care of. And then it adds the new fee for the late inspection. And I know there's been discussion about this so-called grace period. If we can make a change in the rules to reflect that, you know, if we agree that that needs to be done, that is something that would need to go probably back to the governor's office for review and approval. If we can get it into the proposed rules, then the public will have a chance to comment on that. So we'll need to see about that. But for now, this is saying that the fee is going to be graduated, I guess you'd say, for $25 a day for the first 30 days. Then it doubles to 50, and then it doubles to 100 from 30 to 60 days, and then after 61 days, it goes up. Again, these fees are going to be effective after a year. So you'll have a year after the expiration of the certificate of operation to get organized and get together to, get the inspections done on time. So no one's going to be hit with this immediately. So mainly it's for planning. You need to get to where you can get these inspections done, get the owners aware that, if they won't let you in, they're going to be paying the fee and you're not. And so they need to cooperate as well. So that, this is a more fair way to assess the fees, we feel like, and it's to deter the lateness and the fact that people keep operating for a long time sometimes with no certificate. It's not a good thing for public health and safety to have uninspected boilers out there running. So this is what it looks like. And again, this is going to public comment. The industry is going to be welcome to comment on this. Again, we can make changes at adoption, minor changes, but if there's anything you want to talk about now, this is the time to do that as far as these changes.
This is Mark Thompson. I have a question about that. I was unclear when we had the discussion on the grace periods. What was the resolution to that? Is that being considered?
I'm sorry, I didn't catch you, Mr. Thompson.
When you had the earlier discussion on grace periods, is that something that the board is going to consider?
Well, it's so the problem we run into is the statutory requirement says boilers shall be inspected on annual, biannually, or triannually. And with the way the law is written, it does not give a grace period. So there is no grace period according to the law, and that's the problem we run into.
I agree with that, and I know that the insurance people made some valid points, but I would hate to be seen that we are sanctioning the operation of an overdue boiler by giving a grace period. An overdue boiler is a potentially unsafe boiler, and I think the appearance would be that the board is sanctioning the operation if we gave a grace period.
And I agree with you. And that's where I said that I would have to, in order for us to go down, and when we were talking about grace periods, it was a grace period for an AIA that gets responsibility. In other words, the policy changes from, say, HSB to CNA, and it was overdue when HSB dropped coverage and CNA picked it up. So when the policy changed, it was already overdue. Mr. Mullen was trying to find out if there's going to be a grace period for them to be able to go get the inspection done, because they just got it and it was already overdue, or they just got the policy and it's due tomorrow. So it wasn't in their plan. And that's what I was talking about. I got to talk with Ms. Pfefferly so we can make the determination of if we have the statutory authority to be able to grant a grace period for that. Because the certificate of operation requirements are in the law, I can't grant a variance to that. But with the fees, they're in the rules. So I can probably grant, I think I can grant a variance to, say, the first 15 days of a new AIA picking it up. That's something that we'll just have to discuss and figure out how we can do, if it's going to be through a techgram or actually put it in the next rule revision that we come up on.
Mark Thompson again. I'm sure that the attorney, Ms. Laura, she's been listening and she knows that we're talking about responsibility and liability here. And I would just hate to see the board be put in that situation by issuing a grace period, and any language would have to be carefully considered. I'm just apprehensive about it.
Yes,
Well,
sir.
part of the reason that we are changing this scheme of how, late fees are going to work is because boilers are going overdue, and sometimes by years, and we don't like that either. And so this is to help prevent that. And I understand about, if you take over a boiler and, it's already overdue, that's a problem. We're not gonna say, oh, well, take your time, you've got 6 months to do the inspection. We can't do that because it conflicts with the statute. We can be flexible on fees. And so my suggestion would really be that the late fee keeps piling up on the person who transferred the boiler, so that they are still being penalized. In other words, you can't get out from under the fees by transferring the boiler to somebody else. that those fees continue to accumulate until that inspection's done, even if you transfer to a new AIA. I don't think the new AIA needs to be responsible for the fact that it's overdue. They need to get the inspection done fast, and so that's the thing that we need to address, is how fast it gets done and whether that's something we actually want to say in rule or not. And so that's why, this is the kind of thing that Rob and I will usually put our heads together on to see if we can come up with a way to do that. And unless, if we clarify the fee, that it's going to keep piling up until the inspection's done, even if you transfer to a new AIA, that may work or that may not. Rob may see an issue with that. And that doesn't really light a fire in a new AIA to get it inspected, except for the pressure from the AIA that transferred it, since they'll be responsible for the late fees. So there's a few different things to consider on that. Rob, do you have any ideas about maybe adjusting the rule at all at this point?
No, as I understand what Mr. Thompson's saying, I completely agree with him. At no point should we ever say that it's okay for a boiler to go overdue.
That's right.
That inspection is required. The only thing I am willing to grant a variance on is just the fee against an inspection agency if it was not, if that boiler was overdue when they took responsibility for it. I don't feel they should be paying a penalty for the boiler going overdue when it didn't go overdue on their watch. It went on overdue on someone else's watch. We should not be penalizing that AIA with a penalty. We should give them a little bit of time to go do that inspection. And that's something that we can address either in a techgram or later on. But I completely agree. Boilers have to be inspected on time. The law gives no grace period for the inspection, and I have no intention of ever saying that it's acceptable to not follow the law.
This may be something that'll become clearer by the time the rule's ready to be adopted, and it's within reason to be able to, give a few more criteria in the rule. It actually would make it a little less stringent to say that the AIA taking over is not going to be responsible for the late fees that were accumulated before. So if we publish the rules as they are and then we get additional comment, we may be able to do something at adoption. If the board's willing and Rob and I can figure out a way to add something for proposal, we may not be able to do it right here on the spot, but if we can just clarify that in the rule, that's another way to go. The third way is to address it in the responses to public comment in the preamble to the adoption, where we can discuss, how we're going to handle it. It wouldn't actually be in rule, but the preamble is considered part of the rule, that actually technically becomes law as well. So we may be able to explain how that'll be handled without actually putting it in rule, but it's something we kind of need to talk about. So Rob, do you think that would work for you?
I actually think that we probably ought to query some of the AIAs, move forward with it like it is right as it is. And then for us to be able to, because it would be a variance to a rule, I can work on those individually between now and the commission. If the commission adopts it, so if it goes to public comment, we come back and the board approves it to go to the commission, and the commission approves it and says, we're going to make this effective 1 year from today. That's the date of the commission's meeting. So what my thought process is up until that date of it going into effect, I can grant variances and kind of, when that particular instance comes up that an AIA picks up coverage on an overdue boiler, we can work with that. And in the meantime, I can get with some of the AIAs. It'll have to be members that are not on the boiler board, so I don't have a walking forum, but I can get with some of the upper management of the AIAs and kind of get an idea of how they would like to do it, and then maybe just have a task group to address at a different rule revision, and in the meanwhile, use variances to go through, which is perfectly acceptable the way the law and rules are written. So basically, I would just waive the fee on the AIA if they picked a boiler up before it, or picked a boiler up after it was overdue. And that's all I would waive. The owner would still get a penalty for not having the boiler inspected. The original AIA that dropped it when it was overdue would get a penalty from the day it went overdue all the way up to the day that they dropped it.
Alan Kripe, I have a question, same topic, different level of category. So how does the state handle this issue with all of the boilers that are under its umbrella and not through the AIAs? How do they handle, because I know you guys are not overstaffed, so how do you handle this situation with those boilers that those owners that are dependent on the state? Are the owners required to contact the state and schedule this, and that's their responsibility, not the other way around?
That is a true statement. So the boiler law and rules puts the onus on the operator to ensure that the boiler gets inspected as well as an AIA. Now, I will tell you that all the deputy inspectors, they don't just show up on people, and they're actually, my inspectors are actually doing inspections that are coming due anywhere from a month to 2 months out. Some of them are actually working 2 months out. My El Paso deputy, he actually goes all the way out to Midland, Odessa, and a little bit farther, and he actually works 3 months out. Like I said earlier, the majority of the inspections that we have that are overdue are ones that were dropped. The insurance coverage was dropped because they either couldn't get the owner to prepare the boiler for inspection, wouldn't give them access, or just didn't have time, or it was out in a remote area that they couldn't get to. Kind of like what Brian was talking about earlier. If you're like going down to the valley, you know, there's not very many inspectors that actually live in the valley. They try to arrange their inspections to where they can go down and do a full week's work, so they only have one flight down and one flight back. So, okay. Thank you. Any other questions? Okay, please continue, Laura.
Okay. The sanction section here has just been updated to reflect the change with the late inspection fee. Nothing really new there, just getting it to be consistent with the rest of the rule changes. Now here we have sort of a numbering issue. We needed to make room for additional, a couple additional sections, and we didn't want to push everything back and do real drastic renumbering. So the way it's done, we divided up the subchapter into R and S instead of just R, and we made R basic technical requirements, and then the just general technical requirements is S. And the subchapter R has 2 new sections, which is they're new, 6 65, 555, and 560. And then the other sections are just current sections that were repealed and readopted with a new number. A few of them had a few changes, but we'll go through that. So you can see that 600 through 604 are being repealed, and then they're replaced by 550 to 556 and then 559. So you're going to see new material and you're going to see new numbers, but a lot of it is the same material. It's just when we renumber, we have to repeal and readopt. We can't just renumber with a new section number. So that's why we had to do it this way. And so the new subchapter R, basic technical requirements, starts out with 550, and let's see, the 550 is was the former 65-600, and there is no substantive change in it. It's all new, written, marked as new because of the readoption, but there isn't any substantive change. 65-551 was the former 601, and it's got some additional safety requirements in there. It's what was in 601 with a few additions as far as the inspector's safety. It leaves it up to the inspector to decide if it's safe enough to inspect, but it's requiring the premises to be safe for the inspector to inspect. No broken handrails or holes in the floor. And then, let's see.
Hey, Laura,
Yeah.
before you start the next section where goes into the chimneys,
Mhm.
I'd like to take a break. So after you finish general safety here, let's take a break after, if anybody has any questions.
Okay. This section, it's more clear about how the premises need to be safe. And in B, we leave it up to the inspector to decide. If they don't feel safe inspecting, then that's their decision. So this is not really anything shocking. And again, this was in 601. There is some new material, but there's also a lot of this was old material that was already there. Chimneys and vents doesn't have any changes. So the next one we'll talk about is the blowdown. So if you want to adjourn, Rob, for a break.
Okay, let's take a 15-minute break and we will, actually, let's just do a 17-minute. Let's reconvene at 12:30. Thank you. We are in recess. Angelica, I would ask that you do one more roll call, make sure we have everybody back and make sure we still have a quorum, please.
Okay.
We are back at order. I'm calling us back to order. It is 12:32. And I would ask Angela to do a roll call just to ensure that we still have all members in a quorum.
Palmer Dent,
Present.
George Crawford,
Here.
Alan Kripe,
I'm here, and if anybody that's on mute, if you just hold down your space bar, that's a shortcut for cutting in real quick without unmuting, just so you know.
thank you, Mr. Kripe. Kyle Stell,
Present.
Bill Quisenberry,
Here.
Brian Mullen,
Here.
Stuart Nestor,
Present.
Dan Lancaster,
Here.
Mark Thompson,
Present.
and presiding officer Rob Trout.
Here.
You still have your quorum, sir.
Thank you, Angelica. Laura, please continue.
Okay, the next section is new, and this is for blowdown requirements. And the objective here is to have the blowdown requirements satisfied within 6 months. We're giving 6 months in H there at the end. The plumbing code actually requires the water to not be above 140 degrees Fahrenheit when it's discharged. So this is to satisfy that legal requirement, but also for the various reasons that blowdown is recommended by the manufacturer and needs to be done. I'm not a technical person, so I can't tell you all of that, but Rob can explain if necessary. But this is just pretty much basic blowdown requirements, and we can't ignore the fact that even though it's not in the boiler law, it is in the law that they not discharge this extremely hot water, and it's a safety risk. If there is a problem, a person could get burned easily. And so, I don't feel like this is too controversial, but we'll go, this.
So,
Lynn.
we need to cut in. So we don't have that requirement for 140 at the blowdown system. We do have requirements when we go to the waters of the state, but I'm just working on one system right now, and we use 900. The piping leaving the blowdown is designed for 900 degrees Fahrenheit, saturated steam. So 140 is inappropriate for our purpose.
I'm sorry, say that again, Dan?
So the boiler blowdown at one of our plants that I'm reviewing now, it's designed for 900 degrees Fahrenheit saturated steam. And so we wouldn't have a temperature requirement until we get out to the waters of the state. So we're blowing down to, an ancillary pond, and we wouldn't have 140 degree temperature limit.
Well, so if you're blowing down to a pond, it's not going to matter. So this problem is coming from when blow down is sent directly down the sanitary sewer.
Yeah, I understand, and we're not doing that, so.
So it wouldn't be applicable. I mean, you have your blow down tank, but you're not putting it to drain, right?
Yeah, it's not going to the city drain. Right.
Okay.
So it just,
So we
maybe
may
needs a little clarification, maybe.
Mr. Chairman, may I
please
contribute here? This is Bill Quisenberry. Dan, by definition, a blowdown separator is flashing off the steam, and it should mean that the discharge from the separator should be at or below the boiling point of the water relative to the altitude that the installation is at. I think where Rob is going with this, it's in the Uniform Plumbing Code and the International Code that the maximum discharge that would discharge into any kind of a sanitation system. And I kind of think it's in TCEQ. We do a lot of rural installations, is similar that it can't discharge above a certain temperature. And I think it is 140 degrees. I know it's that way in the International and the Uniform Plumbing Code, but I mean, there could never be a 900-degree water discharged because at atmospheric pressure without going through a separator. So I think the target of this is primarily boiler rooms that are in municipalities or boiler rooms that would discharge into a sanitary, like hospitals and universities and manufacturing plants.
So I'd agree to that addition right there, for systems blowing down the sanitary systems.
Mr. Chairman, my only question is, as far as the description of the blowdown separators, that they're constructed in accordance with the ASME, wouldn't it also be prudent for that to be approved, that those vessels would be registered with the national board?
Yes, just like all the boilers that we have now. So can we?
I mean, isn't it required the ASME code? I mean, we have an S stamp that if we manufacture that, we register that with the national board.
Yes. So at the end of D, could we add and registered with the national board?
Said D like in dog?
I'm sorry?
D like in dog, you said?
Yes, right there where you're at.
And what should we say?
And registered with the National Board of Boiler and Pressure Vessel Inspectors. And I can also see the point where up there, so in A, there you go, when entering a sanitary sewer. And that, I believe that will take care of your concerns, Mr. Lancaster, right?
Yes, thank you, sir.
Okay. And Brian, you have your hand up.
Yes, we have rental boilers out in the middle of Midland, Odessa, where they literally cordon off an area and they do the blowdowns into a field. There is no blowdown separator, nothing. It just goes into a cordoned off area in a field that no one's allowed to go into in case they do a blowdown.
Okay, well.
Would that sanitary sewer thing, would the sanitary sewer comment prevent us from having to have a separate blowdown separator?
Yep. So the purpose of this is when entering a sanitary sewer. That's the big concern right there.
Then maybe we ought to put that when entering a sanitary sewer on A.
Item A?
Yeah, that way A says it has to do it and B says the description of how it has to be happen.
I can see that. Can you move that to the end of A, Laura?
Thank you. That's all I needed.
Does anybody else have some concerns? Brian, you put your hand back up.
Sorry.
Mr. Chairman, on item E, where it says a blowdown separator must be fitted with threaded openings, can that be amended to say threaded or flanged openings to facilitate inspection?
See, this is why we have you guys on the boiler board. Yes, threaded or flanged openings. Anything else? I knew you guys would find something that I missed.
Rob Shannon Nestor with CNA Insurance. Do you intend, since we are in a pressure vessel state and certificate pressure vessels, that this would just be a violation?
I'm sorry, I didn't catch that, Shannon.
We don't certificate pressure vessels in the state of Texas, so this would just simply be an inspection violation if we didn't have national board stamping and registration on blowdown tanks. And then the second part of the question is, a lot of times these are difficult to get to and see. So there could be, in some cases, difficulty in identifying the national board stamping if that's a requirement of the rule change. So violation and as recognition of deficiency, and then inspection concerns of finding the stamping in some cases.
Yeah, it'll be, so it's just gonna be just like the expansion tanks on a hot water heating system. They're required to be built and registered with the national board, and a lot of times they cover them up. We just have to make them to where they put them in they install them in a fashion that we can actually get to them and inspect them. Now, keep in mind that when this goes into effect, it will not be retroactive. So we can't add these requirements on any boilers already installed. It would only be for new equipment being installed. And this is where we educate them. You got to install it where it can be inspected, because it does fall within the boundaries of the law and rules now.
Understood.
George Crawford here, not to wordsmith here, but the amendment on D, should that not, is that just about the piping and the fittings, or should that comment go down below on G about the being registered? Because we're talking about the tank right there, right?
Yeah, that was my intention, that the vessel itself.
I kind of thought that, Bill.
Yeah,
Okay,
it's an
so-
approved device is kind of ambiguous, but if it's registered,
Right.
yeah.
Okay,
it
so
clarifies
you
that.
guys want to move that statement and register with the National Board of Boiler and Pressure Vessel Inspectors down to G1 after Division 1.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, good catch, George.
Can you add that to G1? Oh, you're going to make it a new requirement by itself. Okay.
We'll make it G1 first thing we should register.
Well, it has to be built before it can be registered.
Oh, yeah.
So I think that'll work right there. That still covers it. Any other comments? Shannon, you still got your hand up.
I'm sorry, I'll take my hand down. Shannon Nestor, CNA Insurance. I do have a question for Brian Mallon. Are we inducing a potential confined space entry for inspection with this?
That would be determined by the size of the blowdown separator. I'm not planning on getting inside of a blowdown separator. You're talking about how it would be if you have multiple blowdown separators connected by, or multiple boilers connected in with one blowdown piping.
Or if they were subfloor?
That is a good question. I'll have to think about that.
Sorry, Chief, probably for a discussion outside of this, it would be something inspection would have to figure out with a normal hazard assessment.
Kyle Sell, typically if you break the plane of the manway, consider.
I'm sorry, Kyle. Can you get a little bit closer to your mic? It's really hard to hear you, sir.
Yeah, to Brian's point, typically if you break the plane of the manway, that would be considered a confined space entrance.
Mr. Chairman, it's Bill Quisenberry. I want to address Shannon's thought there. I don't know that we're actually requiring an inspection of the blowdown separator or tank so much as requiring its existence, just like we require a boiler room to have a floor drain, means to drain away. And I think for the safety aspect of it, the fact that it's there, I think we can, the nuances of confined entry can be, would be on a blowdown tank. A blowdown separator is too small to have any entry into typically. That if we let that kind of get weeded out separately, I don't know that inspection needs to be a part of it so much as it just needs to be required, like a boiler room drain.
And I completely agree with that. The whole purpose of this is to ensure that we are in compliance with the mechanical code and the plumbing code. That's where this came from. And obviously to ensure that we're not destroying sanitary sewers with hot water and steam lines and stuff like that. So while the pressure vessel's not going to be inspected, it does need to be, depending on what type they use, it does need to have a manner in which the owner to be able to clean it out to keep it functioning properly. If it's a blowdown separator, which usually has a cooler or a injection system to temper the water, those are typically smaller, and they do have places to inspect them, but that's not what we're going to be doing. The whole purpose of this is, one, to make sure the vessel can handle the pressure and temperature at which it's going to be receiving, and allow the water to cool down before it goes into drain. So, does what we have here cover that, or are you recommending a change?
Shannon, Esther, Rob, were you addressing that to me?
Anyone? Are we good with what we have, or is there something else someone wants to? What's the thought by the committee?
I have no further comments.
Mr. Quisenberry?
So,
are you good with what we have?
Yeah, and I'm coming at it from the safety standpoint. I mean, to me, the drainage of it, where it's going ultimately, whether it's sanitary sewer or to a lagoon, is kind of secondary to the safety, as far as a best practice of, releasing that kind of pressure. Brian's comment about the oil field installations, we've seen that, and they're also very common in rural confined cattle operations where there's just a pipe protruding out a wall, and it's just a matter of luck that that someone's not injured in that. But I'm looking at it from a safety standpoint primarily, and the other is just a fringe benefit that it probably won't disturb and destroy sanitary sewer systems.
Mm-hmm. So, do you have a recommended change?
No, sir. I just think that they should, I mean, if I was going to be bold, I'd say, it should be retroactive, that, if it's an unsafe condition caused by a boiler room, what's the best practice? And the best practice would be that it discharges into an approved device, whether or not the state has adopted, the CSD one and all that. It's just what is the best practice? And to me, a pipe stuck through a wall is a lawsuit waiting to happen.
Bill, this is Brian.
Yes, sir.
There is the portion of the earlier in the rules where it talks about all discharges must be to a safe point of discharge. That's where I would normally get that. If they didn't have some sort of obstruction or something else that prevented somebody from getting injured, a lot of times they literally, yeah, you're right, they go through a wall, and then when I see that, I hit them for that, and then I tell them either they need to put a separator or they need to put some sort of a guard element, chain link fence, whatever they have to do in order to prevent that from becoming an issue. But you're exactly right.
Mr. Chairman, doesn't it state someplace in installations that, I mean, that we haven't adopted, but doesn't it state in there that the blowdown shall discharge into an approved device or some verbiage similar to that? And I mean, I'm looking at it from, when the depositions are occurring after someone's been injured or killed, they're going to make the point of what's the best practice and why aren't we doing that? And that's where I'm coming from exclusively on this is, it might not be a pickup parked outside that's hit by that. It could be an employee or a service technician or somebody that somebody inside the room doesn't know is standing out there by a piece of pipe that's a foot off the ground.
So, I would say, this is actually covered in a couple of places. So we have general safety, and as Mr. Mullen and Mr. Nesser has pointed out, if they see it just going through a wall, then that is just a general safety that we will cite the violation on. But I also want to point out, if we were to go to like 65607, which is for power boilers, unfired steam boilers, and process steam generators, when it talks about drains, it says it has to go to a safe point of discharge. So, and then also in this section, we have, I think Laura highlighted it a little bit right there in red, that the blowdown separator or blowdown tank is piped to a safe point of discharge. So, I think we have your concerns covered in multiple places. It's just not in this part.
The only thing, item F, that's in red, it says the vent of the blowdown separator tank. It doesn't say the drain.
Well, the vent is where steam is going to vent out of. Water actually coming down out of the blowdown tank or the blowdown separator should already be cooled below 140 degrees, and now it's not dangerous. You see my point?
Yeah, I see your point.
Yeah, this is Dan Lancaster. Maybe it said vent and drain, that might be good. Because the drain, if it's not filled with water, will be venting steam. But I've had my hand up for a little bit. I wanted to make a change to Delta. Whenever you're ready. You want to go ahead with that?
I'm sorry, say that again.
So I wanted to make a change to D as in Delta.
Uh-huh.
So I'm being told that it should say ASME piping code B31.1.
Okay.
Power piping and not boiler and pressure vessel code.
Did you say piping code?
So it would be ASME piping code B31.1.
Okay.
Power piping.
Add your B right there, Laura. So it'll be ASME. There you go.
Thank you.
Is that it?
And are we in agreement on adding the drain and F? Is there anything else that's called the discharge or something like that?
No, we're okay with that. The discharge is already tempered down to a temperature, so I mean, it's not gonna hurt anybody when it comes out. It's not under extreme pressure or temperature at the blowdown. The vent, on the other hand, might be, because that's that's gonna be what's draining the rapid expansion of the water into steam, if it starts getting too much pressure in the tank. Dan, do you have another comment? Your hand's still up, sir.
Sorry, I need to lower my hand.
Okay. Any other comments?
I just got a question. By stating on D here that we're going with B31.1, that's just for this, because we didn't adopt B31.1 to the rest of the state, correct?
It is, B31.1 is adopted through ASME Section 1, correct? All power piping has to be done to B31.1.
Okay, I'm just trying to make sure. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Okay, Lord, looks like we got it. So let's go ahead and move forward.
Okay, let's see. The 556 boiler room ventilation, there are no changes to that. It was 65603, so there's nothing new there.
So this is all the same words that would just move from a different paragraph to this paragraph.
Right. The original section 603 was repealed and it's just readopted as 556, but yeah, there's no substantive changes there. And this 559 is new. Let's see. It was 65604, and so that's readopted without changes. 560 is new, and my understanding is that most people are already in compliance with this code, but it's just putting that in the rules that they need to be in compliance. And let's see.
Any questions on this? Okay.
So, and then this is the new subchapter S. R and S were one, and it just said technical requirements. So R says basic technical requirements, and this one just still says the technical requirements. And this numbering in this section didn't change. Let's see. This section goes through the subchapter goes through the end of the rules. Let's see. 607, 608, 611 have no substantive changes. 612 is where you'll see them.
Yeah, I think the only changes we had in all the technical requirements for the individual boilers are just corrections of references and pushing it to another paragraph in the rules, or grammar changes.
Yeah, 612 is the changes to repair and alterations. That one is, yeah, everything else here is just not substantive. Getting there. All right. I don't know why, but it doesn't scroll the same way in WebEx as it does normally, so I'm having to go manually here. We're getting there. Okay, this is where there are changes that are substantive about replacing and plugging boiler tubes. Let's see. And so this, of course, means more to you than it does to me, but these are the new requirements being added for repairs and alterations. It's saying that these are alterations here. It's my understanding this is for safety, and so we can discuss.
Does anybody have any questions about this part? So the big change to this, and I kind of want to explain this a little bit. The big change to this is if you are going to plug a tube on a boiler, you have to have the National Board R stamp or a state issued owner user R stamp. And that's if it's welded or mechanically expanded. And the reason for this is because on fire tube boilers, Scotch Marines, those tubes are the stays for those tube sheets. So that was the biggest concern. We want to make sure people that are plugging tubes they understand they're messing with the ability of the vessel to retain pressure and basically understand what they're doing. No questions?
Yes, Rob. Shannon Nestor, I have a question.
I'm sorry?
Yes, Shannon Nestor, I have a question.
Yes, sir.
So just to be clear, inspection will require an R1 for a tube repair, or potentially an R-2 if they've replaced a welded tube with a mechanically expanded tube or otherwise.
Yes.
Okay, so just to be clear, and when we talk to inspectors in the field, we'll now require R1s or R2s depending on the circumstance.
For plug-in tubes, yes, sir.
Okay, Brian, agree?
Sure.
Okay, the last section, let's see, with changes of 614, and those are non-substantive. So we've walked through all of the rules, all of the substantive changes. If you have questions about any of these, we can go back and revisit. If you want to look at something we haven't talked about, now's the time. Any recommendations for wording changes, this is the time to look at that. Because once we propose it, the main way we can convey information after that is making minor changes to the rule text, but we can also explain in the response to comment certain things that maybe elaborate on the way we're going to handle something that doesn't really have to be in the rule, but mostly we try to have it in the rule. You know, if there's anything you feel like we need to look at again or tweak, we'd like to get it into the wording for proposal, given the restrictions there are on how to elaborate on things later and how much we can change the rules at adoption. We're going to be putting this out for public comment, and there may be comments that, you know, kind of reflect what we've talked about here. So, you know, there's no way to predict what people will have an issue with, you know, alternatives they may suggest. So we need to just kind of play it by ear until we get all the comments in. And then, you know, the procedure is that when all the comments have come in, we'll draft some responses, the way we think those should be responded to. And then we have the board meet again to look at all the responses, see whether you agree with them. And then if we are able to, come to agreement on what the response to the comments should be and what any tweaks to the rules should be, if they don't need to be reproposed or go back to the governor's office, then we'd send it on to the commission for adoption. So if you want to raise anything, now's the time to do it, because after this meeting, these rules will go into the process to be published for the public comment period, and that's 30 days long.
Okay, guys. So we've pretty much gone through everything. Now that we have gone through it, I'll need a motion and a second from the board to recommend the proposed rules be published to the Texas Register for public comment as written or as discussed. Would anyone like to make that motion?
Shannon Nestor, CNA Insurance. I propose that the rules be moved forward to the Texas Register as written.
Thank you. So we have a motion. Do we have a second?
Mark Thompson, I'll second the motion.
Thank you, Mr. Thompson. Any discussion? Does anybody have any other questions other than what we've already discussed?
And Rob, your proposal would be with these changes that we made today to the text, the ones that we made in blow down,
So Laura, with the changes that the board asked for on those blowdown separators, those are not substantive changes in my opinion. Do we still need to send them to the governor's office to get approved again?
No, just the motion needs to say the rules as written with the modifications made today.
Okay. So we have a motion and a second. Shannon, your hand's up. Do you have a statement or a question? I know you.
I will be happy to again make a motion to accept the rules as amended for the next step in publishing in the state register.
So you're amending your motion to accept the rules as amended and be published for public comment on the Texas Register. Is that correct?
Yes, I think so.
Okay.
And Rob, I'll second the motion as amended.
Thank you, sir. So Laura, we all good?
Was that Mr. Thompson who seconded? I didn't catch that.
Yes. I'm sorry, Mark Thompson seconded the motion.
You're good. Thank you.
Okay, so we have a motion and a second. We've clarified it. Any further discussion? I'm not seeing any hands from any of the members of the board. So I'm going to go ahead and call for a vote. And Helica, would you please do a voice vote of the membership?
Yes, sir. Palmer Dent.
Aye.
George Crawford.
Aye.
Alan Cripe.
Aye.
Kyle Stell.
Aye.
Bill Quisenberry.
Aye.
Brian Mullen.
Aye.
Stuart Nestor.
Aye.
Dan Lancaster.
Aye.
And Mr. Mark Thompson.
Aye.
Motion passes.
Thank you, gentlemen. That brings us to item H, recommended items or recommendations for agenda items for the next board meeting. Obviously, when we come back, we will have the comments from the Texas Register. So we will have boiler board rules for TDLR will have the answers. We should have all the answers to any public comments that we will go over with you at that time, and hopefully ask for a recommendation to send it to the commission for adoption. Is there anything else anyone would like to see on the next agenda?
Rob, Shannon Nestor, CNA Insurance.
Go ahead, Shannon.
I would like to ask the board to consider alteration of the subsequent inspection form to include verification of national board stamping on blowdown.
I'm sorry?
So on our current subsequent inspection report, there's a subsection for verification of National Board, ASME and Construction National Board of the expansion tanks or hot water heating expansion tanks. Can we add blowdown tanks if applicable to that?
Okay.
That way it will not be missed by inspectors. It would be a change that isn't anticipated by inspection. And if not applicable, it can just be not applicable.
Okay.
Brian Malin, do you concur?
I concur.
Okay. I will start working on language for that, and that would actually, we would not be able to add that into this one. It would actually be at a another revision to the rules later on down the road. But yeah, I agree. We probably need that, but we need to finish this one first. So can you bring that up on our, for items for the next agenda at the next meeting? That would be the best time to bring that up.
Yes.
Thank you.
And Rob, I made a note of it as well, so.
Thank you, Angelica. Anything else? Hearing none, I will move to item I, discussion for time, date, and location of the next board meeting. Angelica is just going to reach out and poll y'all when would be the best time. We have to coordinate getting this out to the public register and let it go for the 30 days and then give us time to draft our responses. So I'm going to ask Angelica to give us, ask y'all for a time and date once we get to know where that date's going to fall. Okay. That brings me to item J, adjournment. We are adjourned.